Well, thank you all for coming. It's 100 degrees outside, but it's nice and cool in here for now. It might heat up later on. My name's Rob. I organize Idea to IPO. We've been holding events in Silicon Valley for many years. We hold events multiple times a week from San Jose to San Francisco. We have a busy calendar of events. I'd like to highlight two events that are coming up in this room. Tuesday, September 12th, Deep Learning 101, featuring Alexander Siplican, PhD. It'll be a great event. Wednesday, September 13th, latest innovations in robotics. We have a great panel lined up. That's at Perkins Coie in Palo Alto. So check out all the details for all those events and all of our other events on our website, ideaipo.com. We were launched officially on February 1st, 2010. At that time, we had no members and no events on our calendar. At this stage, we have over 50,000 members among all our meetup groups in the Bay Area. We've completed over 1,779 events. By any standard, by any measure, we're the most active, most prolific startup event organization in Silicon Valley, bar none. Thank you, I think. Our mission is to promote entrepreneurship, support entrepreneurs, build community, and provide value in the Silicon Valley startup ecosystem. To that end, we provide content that is practical, actionable, and relevant, stuff that you can actually use to succeed as entrepreneurs. We believe in building community because Silicon Valley is an aspirational ecosystem that attracts people from all over the world who come here to do great things. I'd like to know who here is not originally from Silicon Valley? Who here was born and raised in Silicon Valley? About 5 of you. Well, anyway, welcome to Silicon Valley. Whether you were born and raised here or just arrived last night, it's important for us to provide multiple channels for you to meet people, build relationships, and grow your network. So to that end, in addition to our content events throughout the week, we have social events. Every few Fridays, we have a TGIF Mixer. That's thank God it's Friday, and that's tomorrow. We have one at the Hyatt Regency Santa Clara, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. It's hosted by CJ Terrell, one of our team members. It's a free event. Who likes free events? Okay. Well, this one's not free, but the one tomorrow is, so please check that out. With regard to value, it's important that we provide value at each and every one of our events. Not just value for your money, which is important because we know many entrepreneurs are struggling financially. So we make sure our events are affordable. And if you cannot afford the cover charge for whatever reason, come see me. We're always looking for team members to help us out at our events. And all of our team members can come for free. There are lots of other benefits that you get from being a team member and helping us out at events. And at each and every one of our events, we make sure that we have a decent buffet meal. Was this buffet meal decent? Yeah. Well, we do our best. I hope it was decent. We tried. More importantly, though, at each and every one of our events, we want to make sure that we provide value for your time, which is your most valuable resource. Anyone here getting any younger? Besides these 2 young ladies in the front? Anyway, when you invest your valuable time to come to our events, we want to make sure that you maximize your ROI. We have many partners that help us do what we do. Law firms, venture capital firms, angel investor groups, incubators, accelerators, colleges, universities, lots of other players in the Silicon Valley startup ecosystem. Tonight, we're grateful to Datati Digital Marketing for hosting us at this beautiful venue. Is this a beautiful venue? Yeah. We've held many events here, and we look forward to many more. They're a great partner, and we're honored and privileged to be collaborating with them. So I'd like to have Philip, the CEO of Datati Digital Marketing, come up and say a few words. So let's hear it for Philip.
Thanks, Rob. So just briefly, we, as Rob said, Datati Digital Marketing, we help companies build, small to mid-sized companies build their digital marketing strategies. We help with implementation of marketing automation tools, with their web presence, with their brand, and with content. So if anybody has questions about that, how we might help you, as you go forward into building your companies, I'd be happy to talk to you afterwards. Thanks, Rob.
Some of our other partners are here tonight. I also would like to have them come up and say a few words. Let's hear it for Long in Aptology.
Thank you. I feel like I'm one of Rob's oldest sponsor. So good afternoon. My name is Long, like not short, so it's easy to remember. I'm a co-founder of Aptology for like application technology. We're a 5-year-old California licensed and based California company. We have over 400 clients. Our clients range anywhere from HP to individuals like yourself. So I've been with the company a little bit over 4 years. So like I said, the company's been around 5. I've been in the Bay Area for about over 20 years. So what do? We basically do 2 things. We do sales. So what does that mean? So if you're building the next HP and you're looking for your first 10 customers, come talk to me and say, hey, look, I need 10 customers. How much would that cost me? If you got an app and you say, I need 100,000 download, what platform is best for me? How much am I looking to spend? How much do I need? Come talk to me. That's what we do. That's the other thing we do. We do marketing. Marketing is easy if you have $1 billion, but if you only have a couple of $100, it's not so easy. So one of the things that I can share with you is are the challenges that my clients have. My clients don't have millions of dollars to acquire. They're not the Uber where they can lose $1 billion a quarter. So if you're in that situation, I'd like to help. Can't promise we can help in all cases, but we've been doing it a while. So that's what we do. Lastly, we are also looking for partners. And what do we mean by partners? My partners have ventures in the auto industry, the trucking industry, the education industry, the medical industry, the sports industry, the cannabis industry, and they're looking for partners too. So for example, let's say you're a CEO of a trucking company and you're looking for somebody to be a co-founder. That's the kind of type of partnerships that I do. Not only will we build the technologies for you, but we'll hook you guys up if it makes sense. So with that said, again, my name is Long with Aptology. Thank you for your time.
All right, next up we have Christy from Quixie.
Thanks, Rob. Hi, I'm Christy. I work for a mobile app security company. We also specialize in analytics. What we do is we provide on Android and iOS, and we work with developers who do security. We basically wrap your Android or iOS app, and we make sure that it's not vulnerable to any attacks, keep you away from hackers. So if you'd like to talk to me more about how we can secure your mobile app, we also specialize in analytics. Come see me after the event. Love to talk to you more about how to protect your mobile app. Thank you.
Next up, we have Mike from CTO 911.
Hi everyone, my name is Mike with CTO 911. I offer consulting services for startup, helping entrepreneurs build their technology stack, end-to-end process. I'll set up a team and make sure that they execute on the program that you need to run on. I also help entrepreneur connect with investors, and also vice versa. I help investors find great, promising startups. So if you need to talk to me about any of those services, I'll be glad to talk to you in one of those tables on the back. All right, take care.
All right, next up, we have Michelle from Robotics for Good.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I founded a community called Robotics for Good. You can find it on Facebook. We talk about chatbots, messaging, and artificial intelligence. And there's a lot of VCs, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of chatbot maker there. So, just check it out and join us. I also volunteer at something called Compute for Cancer. So you basically plug in your cell phone, your Android or Kindle. When you're sleeping, the processing power is donated to cancer researchers who will find a cure for cancer. Last thing I wanted to say is that I'm working on, with the Hanson Robotics team, Ion and consciousness experts to put love and consciousness into AI. And we need investors. So if you guys, the project is awesome. So if you guys want to invest in the, you guys know Sophia AI is on YouTube. So come and talk to me. Thank you.
Next up, we have Frank from Pure Storage.
Hello guys, I'm Frank, and I'm currently working on some for the entrepreneurs for some small projects for the hardware design, like mechanical enclosure or PCB assembly boards. If you need anything like that, just let me know, and I will be back over there, and you can just come to grab a card or something. Thank you.
So though our local mission is to help entrepreneurs here in Silicon Valley, our greater mission, it's a global mission, is to democratize entrepreneurship and innovation all around the world. Like that. So to that end, we have a robust YouTube channel, youtube.com/idea-to-IPO, so please check it out. We have tons of videos, and we've documented and archived many of our events, and we're going to videotape tonight's event as well. And this rich, valuable content is available on demand, anytime, anywhere, totally free of charge. That's whether you're in Sunnyvale, Palo Alto, Maui, Moscow, or Timbuktu, anywhere where you have access to Wi-Fi. Our partner in this endeavor is Tim Jeggers of Jeggers Films, one of the top professional videographers in all of Silicon Valley. Let's hear it for Tim.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everybody. So I'm Tim. I'm shooting the video tonight, which will be available on the YouTube channel, as Rob was mentioning. I manage his channel, a couple other channels. I do a lot of events like this, just video production all around. I started shooting weddings 10 years ago. I did some photography, and that's pretty much my whole spiel. If you have any questions about any of that stuff, I'd be more than happy to talk to any of you later. And appreciate you all for coming out. I'll go ahead and give it back to Rob. Thank you.
Okay, without further ado, we'll get started with our program. Here's our schedule for the rest of the evening. I'm going to pass it off to our distinguished moderator, and the panel will have a freewheeling discussion till roughly 8:05. Audience members, if you have a question, hold that question. At 8:05, we'll take audience questions. We're going to have audience members line up here, and we'll do it efficiently, and we'll try and get in as many questions as possible. Roughly half an hour of Q&A. At that point, we'll break, and you're welcome to stick around, talk to the panelists one-on-one. As a courtesy to our hosts, we'd like to have lights out about 9:05, 9:10, 9:15. And if you want to continue the conversation, I think there's an after party going on somewhere, at someone's house. I'm not sure where. Maybe the Rosewood Hotel. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to one of the top intellectual property attorneys in all of Silicon Valley. He's a partner at the great law firm of Shepard & Mullen, and they were responsible for sponsoring tonight's buffet meal. So let's hear it for Bill Amon and Shepard & Mullen.
Thanks, Rob. You always bring the crowd. So Shepard & Mullen, we're a international law firm of about 800 attorneys. I keep losing count, it keeps getting bigger. We're stationed out of California, LA, and I'm in the Palo Alto office. And like a good friend of mine whose name is Chris Peralta, I just feel like I should mention that because if I say a good friend of mine, he watches YouTube, so hey Chris. He likes to, when he introduces people or when he asks people to introduce themselves, he likes to say, what's your superpower? So what is it that you do? What is it that people can really come to you and you can help them with? So my superpower is that I help startup companies, primarily in intellectual property. I have a robust book of business that it consists entirely of companies that were startups at one time. Some of them have gone IPO, so there's public companies in there. Some of them have been acquired, and so I represent some big companies now, but all of them started off as startups, and I'm kind of proud of that. So if you need any help with anything related to startup, I'm probably your guy. I think that the panel is going to introduce themselves individually. And there's one more thing that I should probably mention. I don't know if any of you are engineers or in college, but I'm also the recruiting chair for Palo Alto. So if you know anybody, or if you're looking to be an intern, I'd like to find someone in tech, junior or senior in college, who can maybe work as an intern for us. So that's my superpower. I think that the panelists are going to be pretty good at introducing themselves, but I'd like to, I know this isn't going to feel very personal, but if I could ask you to introduce yourselves by raising your hands. I'd like to know how many of you are investors? So we have a couple of investors. Look around, because that's their superpower. How many of you are academics? Okay. There's one over there. So you must know somebody who I can get as an intern, right? How many of you are lawyers? Sorry. Yeah, there's a few of us. How many of you are employees at a machine learning startup? And keep your hand up if you have traction. Yay. That's the hard part, right? Government employees? Oh, there it is. How about a founder of a machine learning startup with traction? Oh, there's at least one here. Here, not putting your hand up this time. And journalists, bloggers, writers, marketeers, or PR people? Oh, not too many. There's Tim. There's Tim. I guess someone who's curious about machine learning? Yay, you're in the right building. Wannabes? No, I don't know why Rob put that on this list. So let me have the panelists introduce themselves, so hopefully they'll be able to tell you what their superpower is, so you'll know who to circle around with at the end of the event. On mute.
Hey everyone, my name is Preeti. I am an investor with Ignition Partners. It's an early stage firm focused on enterprise investing. I, in particular, am focused on investing in machine learning and AI. Some of my investments include a company called Graph Lab that got acquired by Apple for $200 million within 2 years. There's Tractable, which is a deep learning computer vision company focused on auto damage estimation. If there are folks in the crowd here who are thinking of starting a company or looking to raise their Series A, please do get in touch afterwards. And like I said, it's enterprise investing, not consumer.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Levinson. I have some deep history in machine learning. I've been doing it for the last 5 years. I know that's ancient in our world. I started off with a big data company, and we were siphoning data off of Twitter. Yes, they knew we were actually doing that. And we threw all of that data into a large cloud system, and we extracted through machine learning and natural language processing specific things that people would say about brands or about themselves. And then we created audiences around that data and sold that data to marketers so that everyone in this room could get spam email.
Yay.
You're all welcome. From that company, in my current company, I'm only going to do 2 companies because apparently I only have an hour tonight. From that company, we're currently the same engineering and product team. We're currently developing a voice AI virtual assistant platform for automotive technicians and mechanics. And our objective is twofold. One, and I'm sure a lot of you may have read this article that came out over the last year, but Oxford University is predicting within the next 20 years, 47% of jobs currently conducted by humans will be conducted by machines. So we're on the verge of losing about half of our workforce within the next 20 years. And it seems like no one's really talking about it in the Valley. So I decided to start a company to try to fend off that drastic future that's ahead of us. And so what we're doing is we've created a voice AI platform, in essence leveraging Google DeepMind. And we're creating use cases in which machine actually collaborate and empower and augment humans versus replace them. So those are some of the things that I would love to talk about tonight with everyone. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sophie Vikland, and I'm a long-time entrepreneur. My full-time job is I have a tech company in the space of deep learning, and in my spare time, I run Silicon Valley Deep Learning Group, which we are almost at 5,000 people this year, and it's an initiative for startups in the space of artificial intelligence and deep learning. Also, I'm an investor with Golden Seeds, which is Women's Investors Network. I think largest in the United States, and we invest in women-owned companies. So I think my superpower is bringing together great teams and building gigantic communities, because I love people and I also love computers and everything that has to do with them. So I think it's a great combination.
Thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Yad Oren. I'm from SAP. I wear two hats in SAP. I lead the corporate strategy group for technology and platform. So together with SAP leadership, we define and drive the long-term strategy for technology. And of course, machine learning is a very, very big part of what disrupting our enterprise at the moment. My other hat, I'm also the lead technical advisor for SAP.io. This is a business unit which is responsible for building the next generation of ecosystem of startup around SAP dataset and API. We have SAP.io Funds, which is a venture capital, investing in early stage startups, and also fundraise around the world with 50 startups in Berlin, in San Francisco, New York, Tel Aviv, Israel, that help shaping the future of intelligent enterprise. So my superpower, if you are a startup around an enterprise and you think you can change the future of enterprise, please reach out to me, and hopefully together we can make a better world.
So this is an unusual panel. I think everyone on the panel, one of their superpowers is investing. So that's kind of cool. I don't think I've been on a panel like that before. We're misbalanced. So we're gonna start off with some of the easy questions. What is machine learning, and what are some of the hottest areas in machine learning? I guess everybody can take their turn. Yep.
Okay. It's really interesting because if you ask someone what's machine learning versus what's AI versus what's deep learning, and I've done this before, over the last year or so, just for giggles. What's really interesting is you'll actually get a different response nearly every time. So I don't think there's a lot of people actually that really truly understand the differentiation between machine learning, artificial intelligence, and deep learning. And I'm really happy that we can get together tonight and talk about that, because I think fundamentally that's really important to understand initially. So very quickly, to me, what machine learning is it's very linear. It's a progression of learning that the machine does through a single set, usually of algorithms, of which you have massive data feeding into those algorithms. And there's no need to create a large programming or a large code base because the learning actually comes from the data versus the learning comes from more and more code specific to how to manipulate that data. So in layman's terms, that would be how I would explain what machine learning is. What artificial intelligence is quite frankly, we haven't really seen artificial intelligence yet, not to shock everyone. We've seen initial infant of artificial intelligence. A use case would be Pinterest being able to categorize various images throughout its website. Another example of artificial intelligence would be what Facebook's doing specific to facial recognition. Again, you have a context of massive data sets that's conducting a training experience. Where artificial intelligence kind of gets to the next level on a comparative basis to machine learning is that the data is actually used to have some semblance of an understanding. And that's a great way to kind of coalesce into deep learning. The best way that I've heard deep learning explained is that if a machine sees a stop sign, the machine will know that the stop sign is an octagon, it's the color red, it has words on it, and then it will be able to deduce that those elements comprised creates a stop sign. So that is where we're kind of hovering with deep learning. And what that means now is that we can take machine learned algorithms and we can run those in a deep learning environment to start to create deductions that are happening in a specific operational process, or to recognizing an image, to understanding voice. So that's how I kind of categorize and break down the sequences from machine learning to deep learning. And I know I kind of was hazy on the artificial intelligence side of it, because quite frankly, we haven't really evolved neural networks within the context of computers that can emulate the human brain yet. But as soon as we're able to do that, I'm sure we'll have some semblance of artificial intelligence.
So I'd like to add that machine learning is any system that reacts to data that you feed it. So it's not programmatically similar to regular programming. And right now, the pivotal moment that defined neural networks and deep learning, which I think is deep learning is the hardest part of machine learning at the moment, is in 2012, then the search capabilities extended to ability to get 10,000 images of cats, and maybe dogs if you want to be able to process and recognize the images at a CDPR conference. Hinton's work, it was a pivotal moment to launch deep learning. And it wasn't possible before. It wasn't possible 20 years ago, even though the research existed already for many, many years. It wasn't possible even 10 years ago. It only became possible in 2012 because the technology got to the point where you can process gigantic sets of data. So right now, there's lots of information about big data for deep learning. And again, I may be biased, but I think deep learning is the hottest area. So we're very fortunate right now to live in this revolution of deep learning and machine learning. I think we're very fortunate.
Yeah, maybe I just can add from my side, I think artificial intelligence is the kind of the Uber concept we all try to reach to. Intelligence, I think the definition in a dictionary is that one can perceive the environment and then take a decision that will maximize the chances for success. So if a machine can really understand what's going on and with every action can do the best, the activity with the best possible outcome, then it's an intelligent machine. I think the best example we have for artificial intelligence is AlphaGo for DeepMind, who kind of present something which is pretty similar. Machine learning, to me, I mean, there is several ways to achieve artificial intelligence. The only practical way today is really by machine learning, which means that machine can learn from data and apply this knowledge in different situations. So this is a pretty, let's say, it's a domain of activities it can do based on this data, but this is the only way to achieve artificial intelligence today, or something that's close to this. We are not yet to see what we call the general artificial intelligence, something that really evolve full reasoning and enable like Robocops or the movie Hair or all the sci-fi thing we are seeing. And deep learning is a technique to implement machine learning. Like Sophia said, it's really suitable for certain amount of problems that necessitate, let's say, more layers, if you are one of the geeks in the room like me with engineering background, so needs more and more algorithm, let's say, depth into your neural network. Another name for deep learning is hierarchical learning, because you have many hierarchy there. And really, this was the breakthrough that enabled doing better image recognition and speech recognition. I think last year, we broke the human error rate for image recognition and speech recognition. I think Google broke the speech recognition error rate with 4.9, with human error rate is 5.9, and for image recognition, Microsoft achieved around 3. using advanced deep learning. So this is a technology that's really suitable for large amount of data set, usually needed for voice recognition and image recognition. And the last point I will add, you definitely need the data, like Brian said. We also have you need a lot of computation power, because running deep learning and even machine learning, it's really process heavy. So today we have the machines, right? Even our smartphone can run machine learning algorithm and train the machine and gain some knowledge. And you need algorithm. We see a lot of proliferation of new innovative framework like TensorFlow, MXNet, and so forth, with algorithms that help by using this data, running on the computation power to create this knowledge. So the three drivers are really data, strong computation power, and very good algorithms.
So, enough definitions on ML and AI have been offered so far. I'll answer the second part of your question, which is basically what are some of the hottest areas in machine learning right now? I believe machine learning has the potential to revolutionize most, if not all, the different verticals that you can think of. So instead of picking out a few, because they may be the ones that are being focused on right now, what I think is, if you think about the kind of machine learning companies that have come across in the last few years, a lot of technology has been created for technology companies. But if you look at verticals which are traditionally considered non-technology sectors, like say insurance or construction, you have oil and gas, these sectors they haven't seen any kind of new innovation in a really long time. And so these sectors are actually thirsting for any kind of software that would either optimize their internal systems, reduce their bottom line, increase their top line. And so these sectors right now are a blue ocean in terms of companies that are thinking of creating software. So if you create ML-enabled software that fits into their workflow, those areas have the potential to be very big right now.
So along those lines, what do you think is going to be the areas of machine learning that will be popular for, and let's even divide it up into like startup companies and who's going to monopolize the machine learning field in other areas?
Sure. So the way I would like to segment that is to think about companies as startup companies that are focused on vertical plays versus horizontal platform. Right now, if you are a startup, my suggestion or recommendation is to focus on a vertical. The reason being, if you think about Google, Facebook, Amazon, all the top 5 companies in the world right now, they have doubled down on ML AI. They have tremendous amounts of resources, and they have all kinds of data about every person who's online in any way whatsoever. So if, as a startup, you decide that you want to build a company that will go head against these kinds of big companies, it's going to be very hard for you to sort of succeed. The other thing to think about, so horizontal platforms, that's one reason that horizontal platforms don't make a lot of sense for a startup. The other thing is, if you build a horizontal platform, then it basically means you've got to figure out a go-to-market strategy. And go-to-market strategy could be different based on what vertical you're focused on right now. The channels that you need to sort of utilize to really grow your companies are different based on what vertical you are. For a startup, I think the best way really is identify one vertical, identify the biggest pain problem that that specific vertical has, and then go and solve that problem the best way possible so that the enterprises or the companies or your potential customers actually say, okay, this is something we really need. So to answer the question again, to sort of summarize it, if you're a startup, the best way really is to identify a vertical and a pain point in a vertical. And if you are a larger company, then you are in a position to go build an entire platform and have all kinds of different strategies and go-to-market strategies and basically attack those markets.
I'll keep the same question for the rest of you, but I was wondering if you could you're talking about verticals are the way to attack it as a startup. Would you suggest that the verticals, I mean, how do you manage the data, right? So there's so much data that's available, like you mentioned Google, but if you're a vertical, how can you be sure that the data that you have is going to be sufficient to capture the vertical?
So I should have categorized it further. So the way to think about it is, if you think about the biggest difference between consumer companies and enterprise companies. So the difference really is, for a consumer company, the consumer companies get paid by their customers in terms of data. Whereas for enterprise companies are actually looking for their customers to give them real dollars. And this distinction really sort of distinguishes what kind of products should consumer companies build and what kind of products should enterprise companies build. Because these large Google, Facebook, and Amazon, they actually have a lot of consumer data. They might not necessarily, like I just talked about, insurance companies. They may not have every fender bender or every auto-related or insurance-related data with them, but they do know the spending behaviors of all the consumers, what do consumers do online, and where do they go. Google has from, whether it's Google Map, email, they have gathered all kinds of data on people. They may not necessarily have enterprise data related to a specific vertical. And so, if you are an enterprise-focused startup, it's sort of, there are still a lot of different verticals where the big five don't really have the data that is oxygen really for any machine learning algorithm to say, okay, this data is going to train my algorithm so well that this is just going to produce differentiated results compared to anybody else. But if you are a consumer company, instead of going head first and going directly against the big five, if you just look at what kinds of companies have succeeded on the consumer side, it's been companies that started off, that built some kind of a toy, a fun thing that users just said, hey, this is cool and I want to use it. And it started off as that, and it became an addictive toy or an app that people just wanted to use. Snapchat, Instagram, these are all examples of something that started off as small toys, but over time, they really became addictive to the point that they actually are public companies, and Instagram got acquired for a huge amount by Facebook. But those are successes which started off not solving a real pain point, because consumers are not really looking for that. You have the big five who are focused on solving, if there's a pain point for consumers, you bet that the big five are solving that for you. So consumer companies, if they build something fun, something addictive, they're likely to succeed. On the enterprise side, on the other hand, you've got to build something that actually identifies a pain point and solves it better than anybody else.
If you remember the question.
I love what you were saying, and I agree 100%. And I also look at it within the context of structured data versus unstructured data, because I think ultimately, really, that's what we're talking about. So historically, we haven't had the processing power really to do anything within the unstructured data world. And then with the advent of Spark and Hadoop and other like technologies, we've now been able to, JSON, we've now been able to take huge amounts of data and create analytics and predictive analytics around that data, because we can flatten those data files and then we can throw them as objects in the cloud, and then we can start to run various different algorithms against those objects, and we can do it in real time and at scale. So that's what has kind of changed the context. So how I look at it in the companies that I invest and advise and build, how I look at it isn't so much the data side. I know that's what everyone really harps on. I can honestly say I'll probably never build a Google, and I'll never have access to the type of data that they have. And I could probably honestly say everyone in this room is you're in the same boat as me, so congratulations. So what I think we should think about more is what is the human experience, right? So what's the human experience within the context of interacting with the machine? How do we improve upon that human experience? How do we improve upon the environment of which we live? And then fundamentally start there, and then build your software around the human and the environmental experience, and then let the folks at Amazon and at Google feed you the analytics and feed you the data that you require. But I'm always looking for kind of the human experience. So that's what I would chirp in on this topic specifically.
I just wanted to add that this is a great point because I believe that your point about deep reinforcement learning, that is in itself a key to understanding, hopefully understanding human intelligence really soon. It's not yet understood and it's not yet too well emulated, even though there's, of course, so many companies are trying to do that. And also, I believe that artificial intelligence, at least how I see it, is more a user experience. It's a very subjective experience that's judged by a human consumer that could be fooled thinking that's a human on another, that the person is talking to a human instead of AI. And that is a very interesting experience that so many companies are trying to create, is how do we fool humans into thinking that they interact with fellow humans? And nobody has yet quite done it, so there is a big future to that. And I know the definition of, Alan Turing's definition is, of course, has different meaning to it, but right now, as person who runs the company, of course, AI interactions with people is the most important to all companies that do consumer side. And also I wanted to add to your point about enterprises that I think enterprise has more data, so they are at more advantage than consumer side because for them they get narrow tasks. They get larger data sets, and consumer companies, of course, struggle to get the relevant data and acquire relevant users. And you would know all about that.
Yeah, I think this is a great build-up for a point I had in mind. One of the topics that I'm fascinating about, and it's not potentially as sexy as conversational UI or machine vision, is the data. And since data is the oil that fueled the entire learning, and some say it's the new gold, there is a lot of innovation around this data enhancing and cleansing, enabling data, transferring between a database to a knowledge base, which means using technology like deep residual learning to create ontologies and just make the process the data more learnable, because 90% of the organizations and the enterprises are not the Google or Facebook or Netflix of the world. They have legacy data. They are not data-driven companies yet. They acquired other companies and integrated the database, but there is no connection between them. So the learning process is very, very suboptimal. And for those of you who tried machine learning, cleaning the data, preparing the data is 90% of the effort today. It's very easy, relatively easy, using TensorFlow and other open source framework to create machine learning model. Yeah, you just plug in your Jupyter front end and it works nicely, but the data needs to go a step function, and there is a lot of innovation around making the data more learnable, higher quality, knowledge base, and just creating an ontology, something which is connected with relationship. In my opinion, this is also a very important step to achieve artificial intelligence, because then you don't only have the learning, you have the reasoning, something which is equally important. Besides this, there is a very interesting innovation around what I called the shovels provider. I mean, it's no secret, it's a gold rush in machine learning. So there are many smart startups who provide the shovels to the gold rush miners. You know, those are the ones who actually got rich here in San Francisco, the one who sold the shovels, not the one who was mining gold. Because everyone tried to do it. And we ran a survey with 1,000 enterprises. And 94% of the enterprises are sure that machine learning is imperative to get a business differentiation and a competitive advantage. But 60% of them said that they don't have the right skill set to do so. Again, we're talking about industry customer, the 90% of the companies which might not be sexy as Facebook and Netflix. So there is many innovation around automation of the machine learning process, reducing the time that it takes to do this kind of thing, kind of spoon-feeding you with the right model, determining the number of layers you need to do in a model, because it's a very iterative process to learn. You need to do it again and again and tune. It takes a lot of time. So kind of learning how to learn, it's something that we see quite a lot of startup investing in, and I think it's pretty smart. The business model is a bit tricky. It's a hard conversation to have with the CIO. But this is another area that's kind of providing the shovels for the gold miner that I definitely see around.
So my next question, well, actually, I guess I'll just tell a little story first. So we've been discussing in the legal industry about how machine learning is going to be incredibly important. It's going to disrupt the legal industry, certainly. It's just like probably most of the verticals that you can think of. But I've observed that, at least for law, as the technology improved, it simply changed the services that were provided. And so, for example, contracts used to be written out with a paper and pen, and they were about 3 pages long, because if you wanted to change it, you had to scribble it all out and start over. And then typewriters came along, it sped it up a little bit, word processing, and now these things are huge, right? And so they take more lawyer hours to prepare, even though you have better technology. And I think that you're probably going to see something like a replacement, or you'll be losing paralegal jobs, docketing, things like that, as the machine learning takes over. And it already is to some extent. But you're going to see more sophisticated techniques that are just going to be using the technology to then build on top of it with professionals who can do so. So a shift more towards partner level work. So I'm curious in the context of work disruption, and I know this may not be considered a good thing, because yay, contracts are more complicated. But in some industries it might actually be a good thing, because you're going to be augmenting the workers, and as you disrupt the workforce. So my question, or maybe if you don't want to consider it a question, just my topic is, what kind of disruption are we looking at, and not just on the negative side, but what are going to be some of the positives of the augmented workforce?
So I believe no technology is an unalloyed bane or a boon. Every kind of revolution that has happened in the past has led to job losses, but it has brought in different kind of jobs. And to your point about how some jobs are going away, but some other kind of jobs are coming in, I think this sort of applies to a lot of other industries. On top of that, if you think about it, the kind of jobs that are sort of going away right now are the ones that are repetitive tasks, or tasks that are very easy to do. And those are the tasks that are getting replaced right now. But what it is bringing in its place is, if you think about whether it's machine learning, whether it's deep learning, what any of these technologies, the way they work is, let's say it's an autonomous car, and the car has to figure out when it's going on the road that this is a pedestrian, this is a street sign saying stop, there's a signal over there. The way the car learns that is, somebody has to sit first, look at the footage, and mark saying this is a stop sign and this is a traffic signal. And so new kinds of jobs are getting created. These guys are called labelers. And so thousands and thousands of labelers are coming in. They are, again, low-end jobs, but the kind of jobs that are going away right now are also low-end. So I think at some point, there's going to be a huge bifurcation in terms of people who know and can deal with algorithms. They have certain kinds of jobs, and then there are going to be these jobs as labelers. The other category, again, which is a big category, is when an algorithm does the job it's supposed to do, somebody has to take a look at that job done, saying, okay, this was done right, or this improvement could be done, for which, again, a human is required. So there are different kinds of jobs that are getting created to replace the jobs that are sort of getting automated. That's sort of a short answer. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree with Preeta. I think historically, as technology has advanced, that's created new opportunities for humans to have different types of jobs. Where I'm a little nervous, for lack of a better word, but where I'm a little nervous is I don't think as a human race we've ever really gone into a context where the machine at some point may equal or surpass the human brain. So if the machine equals or surpasses the human brain, then what ramification does that have on a societal basis? And I'll give you a perfect example. I was at a venture capital meeting 2 or 3 months ago, and a young company came in, and they had a robotic arm to flip burgers. And they were trying to raise money so that this robotic arm could replace everyone that works at McDonald's and Jack in the Box and In-N-Out Burger across the world. And when that company left, the sad part about the commentary after they had left was that in all probability they will get funding. In all probability, mechanical arms will be at fast food restaurants. Their operational budgets will improve. The economics around their business will improve. And then people will lose jobs. And so I think we're going to slowly see those type of use cases happening. So what I'm interested in and what I'm trying to advocate is that we start to think about the evolution of technology as far as how it can augment humans, how humans can collaborate with technology instead of actually replacing that human worker. Why do we necessarily need to jump into a robotic arm that flips burgers? Why can't we jump into a virtual assistant that helps a child learn how to read? So I think it's just the perspective of what we're trying to accomplish as a society and how we're looking at things is going to be really important. And I think the viewpoint of just trying to create a better operational context by automating every due process within a business is one that could have damaging effects over the next 20 to 30 years. So I'm preaching this to everyone that I'm speaking with, and my hopes are that a lot of you will think about it as well with how we want to evolve and leverage ML and artificial intelligence and deep learning, and for what purpose.
Well, I agree with everything you said. It's really good points. And to your comment about truck drivers, technology obliterated labor unions since the years then computers came into existence. So right now, Teamsters and truck driver union still exists. They drive garbage trucks, and also they drive trucks for long-distance hauling of goods. But, you know, as auto came into existence and other self-driving trucks companies coming into existence, we may see that union possibly also gone sometime soon as trucks learn how to self-drive themselves around the country, so around the world. So technology has been a blessing and a curse since 1970s. Wages stagnated for Americans, at least in the US. The reason is, of course, computers came into existence. And as you mentioned, the shovels, then in 19th century, steam shovel was invented, replacing 50 diggers that used to dig ditches for construction. So now a steam shovel could come and dig it with a giant metal claw. So all these people have to either get certified as, I guess, steam shovel operators and become masters of steam shovels, or they had to, you know, do something else. What happens is that we got too much productivity that technology brings, and that's a good thing. So what happens is that computers create a lot of productivity that doesn't need as many workers as it used to need. If we look at fully automated car manufacturing plants or any other kinds of manufacturing, and you mentioned robotic arms, of course. If you look at, you know, in China right now, there is a 5-year plan to implement robotics in every factory. The government plan in China, they are trying to become competitive because labor in China becoming too expensive. That's just one of the examples. They know that Philippines, Mexico, and also other East Asian countries of Southeast Asia, they're trying to take the jobs away. So of course they said we're going to implement robotics so we can compete. So you don't need human workers. And it's not that we don't need human labor. The technology creates a lot of opportunities to grow and to, as you mentioned, move into different type of jobs. For myself, it's very important to know what happens to women's employment. One of my panelists in the summer was a woman out of Stanford X, Nicole Shanahan, who runs Clear IP. They automate legal research. So to your point about legal research automation, it's common. They become pretty good, have pilots in various legal firms. So it's definitely a very big issue for women because women are main caretakers. The population of the earth ages. We all age, so women have to not just work and raise children, but they also have to care for the elderly. So would that be automated? That's an interesting question. Overall, it's really hard to automate difficult tasks such as human interaction. So human interaction would still remain as a job. You can't really replace that. But again, we'll see what happens. We live in very interesting times of change.
Yeah, I think augmenting humans is a very noble idea, and I wish it will be the future, but I see things a bit differently. I think that since what's pushing the humankind, what's pushing companies, NASDAQ, whatever you're going to look about it, a revolution is productivity. So if it's a routine job or a job that generates data, then it's in risk. And I think there is a happy ending to this story. It's not like we're going to be unemployed and poverty will be everywhere. I think there is a lot of responsibility on government in order to shape the future workforce. And I know I mean, regardless to companies and enterprises, I look at my 1-year-old son sometimes and think, will he ever need to learn how to drive? It's a skills, I mean, it's a society, it's different. And we start seeing many routine jobs getting automated, paralegals, you gave a good example, HR recruiter, some finance, because this is increase the productivity of the entire world, if you'd like. I do think, and there is a nice example, I think, from the government of Singapore, they have a work stream for, they call it broken career ladder. Ladder like you climb, okay? With my accent, it's hard to say ladder, so I say ladder. Broken career ladder. So they would like to make sure that the young generation that goes into college will have sustainable living and will learn the right skill set, not to get automated. I think this is a great thinking. So we can shape the next generation of workforce. It can be labelers and much more than that. I personally think that we might going to see, hopefully see a shorter work week and less work days because there will be a lot of automation. And who knows, maybe just like in, I think it was the 14th century, the Renaissance came, we'll have more time for those creative tasks that are music and art. I went to music school, I'm a frustrated artist. I never had the time to invest in this. I'm also a mediocre artist, this is why I found myself in tech, but this is a different story. But you know, who knows, maybe the next Botticelli or Michelangelo sits here and just need to work 10 hours a day, and we're going to see another Renaissance, and everybody will have, the right income because the world is becoming more productive and services cost will drop because it will be cheaper if you don't have a guy who flip. Yeah, it's a sad story, but I believe in evolution and I believe we're going to see a better world using this technology. We just need to be smart and have government all harnessed to this cause.
So I was hoping to hear more about the dystopian future. Unfortunately, you guys sound pretty optimistic, so let me try to bring you down. I'm going to say this, do this in my scariest voice. Cybersecurity. So that's not really a question, but I think a lot of people are talking about it. So what do you think?
So I believe cybersecurity absolutely needs to be front and center when we talk about machine learning and AI. A lot of cybersecurity companies that have come into pitched, talk to any VC, whoever have come in recently, they will all talk about, hey, one of our distinguishing features is we have this ML-based algorithm that can do XYZ, ABC. And they think this is, ML and AI, how that will help catch malware is very well understood by a lot of people. The aspect that a lot of people haven't thought about is the same ML and AI is in the hands of the hackers as well. which basically means that hackers can also use the same technology to automate cyber attacks. And so the cyber attacks are going to get increasingly worse, increasingly more complex, where it's more difficult to stop them. Also think about the fact that a lot of industries right now are going through a digital transformation. I talked about how I'm not the only VC who is talking about, hey, let's invest in sectors that have traditionally not seen a lot of technology. So a lot of industries, like I talked about, oil and gas, insurance, construction, all of these which traditionally have not been online or digital businesses, even those are becoming digital businesses online. They are all coming online. So the vector of attack, or the number of things that can come under attack, is increasing at a very fast proportion, and the attacks are getting increasingly more complex. So this is definitely a big issue, and the repercussions of how cyber crimes will affect us, it's just a disaster, really, if you think about it. There was a bug called Nightshade, which was very popular. This malware basically could be deployed by even a person who was technically not savvy. They could create a ransomware out of it. That this ransomware could video record, audio record people, just eavesdrop and do all kinds of nasty things. And this is going to increase unless people keep cybersecurity at front and center.
Should have let you go last, because then we could have left on this dystopian note.
But you said you were very positive.
They're having a private conversation over there to the left, or you're right. Yeah, so I have two views of cybersecurity. One view is that I personally don't care if someone steals my personal information, so I'm okay with it. And so I hope by my not caring that put about 83% of those guys out of business, because I'm really not very interesting, and there's not really much more about me that isn't already on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, so go at it. So that's my one viewpoint there. And I think if societal-wide, I think the younger generations actually feel exactly like how I feel. They're more open. They understand that their data and their information's out there. And then that means the human-to-human relationship becomes that much more important, because that's where you can have your true essence and your love and all of those things that happen within kind of that human context. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. The second thing is that a lot of security software up to this point in time has been built based upon machine-to-machine. So what I mean by that is that firewalls and RSA and all of those different companies that have evolved, Checkpoint, have evolved over the last several decades. It's all been about securing the server or securing the mobile device. And it's all been within the context of machine-to-machine. I think what artificial intelligence and machine learning and deep learning, what they're going to enable us to do is they're going to enable now for the machine to recognize who the human is. So the machine really hasn't been able to recognize who the human is. So that point of entry to hacking, there's been really no barrier for that. The dirty little secret in Silicon Valley, specific to IoT, and all of the different routers and devices that Cisco has built over the years, primarily across the world, is that anyone can pretty much break into them. So cell towers run off of T1 lines, and there's no security at the cell towers. So it's not really a context of creating bigger walls or creating heavier RSA algorithms. I think it's a context of training the machines to recognize who those humans are when that human's interacting with them, regardless of where that physical hardware device is, and then building defenses through that recognition. And I think that's going to be the next wave of companies. And you're going to start to see passwords that are based upon individual biometrics of a human being. You're going to see combinations of biometric behaviors filtering into actual passwords. So my facial recognition, my gait, how I type on a keyboard, my keystroke, these are all going to become elements that a machine can recognize, and that's going to be the next line of defense, I believe, of security.
Good point. So I would like to add that the playing field is leveled now. You have great AI-based defenses against viruses, but also you're going to have the same virus attacks coming from similar systems. So it's an equal playing field. So definitely a lot of attention has to be paid to keeping that field well protected for the people that have to defend the data.
Yeah, so 2 points. I think that security is a big thing for sure, but we also see some improvement there. I liked the federated learning if you follow Google latest releases. So if you have an Android phone, you are actually training the model on the phone itself. So each one of, it's called federated learning. So it's like a collective brain that know how to train in your devices, and it saves the need to send data to the main server, to the main brain. So this is a more secure methodology, and we see improvement there. What I'm worried about is really data privacy, the big businesses and legit player, because data, like we said, it's a new gold, will just want you access to your data. So it might be more secure, but you have part of Google Brain, Google DeepMind right next to you when you go to sleep at night. And yeah, and if you're a startup, maybe last point from my side, something I see a lot in enterprise startup, try to understand exactly what kind of data movement you have, because they're a great solution, a big market for, let's say, HR solution, right? A lot of automation go on there. So taking a data out of HR system, moving into AWS or to Azure, it's definitely secure, but it has some meanings to the customers, and some startups that I see just bounce with the data around, don't really understand how the chief security officer of enterprise may look in that. So data movement, try to minimize the number of steps you're doing there, but all in all, security is definitely a big thing that's going to keep surprise us in the future, I'm sure about it.
So I don't know why I'm using the mic to say this, but for Q&A, we don't have to use a mic to respond.
Well, this is Silicon Valley, right? We're all high tech. Anyway, let's hear it for our panel. So we'd like to take as many questions from the audience as possible. So if you have a question, just come on, line up here, and we'll take as many questions as possible. Please make sure your questions are interesting, no pitches or commentaries. John.
Hi, I have a question. What do you think of Ray Kurzweil's prediction about the singularity? So at some point, when machines get smarter than humans.
You can all speak. You can all speak. You all have microphones on. Hello? Hello.
So I think your question was, when do machines... Yes, so I don't know if everyone in here is familiar with a gentleman named Ray Kurzweil. He wrote a book called The Singularity. Okay. So Ray Kurzweil wrote a book called The Singularity. He's now a director of engineering at Google. And he actually started Singularity University, which is at Moffett Field. So Ray predicted in his Singularity book that, I don't know the exact date, but I think originally his prediction was 2027. And then now I think today he's moved it to like 2047, 2050, whatever that might be. So what the singularity means is that is the point in time where we either have a single computer or a network of computers that equate to the same processing power of the human brain. So when that happens, it's going to be a very interesting, reality that we're all hopefully going to be alive to witness. And then the debate actually carries forward from not if it's going to happen or when it's going to happen, but the debate is now carrying forward to Ray and some of the guys around him. I actually used to work for Ray way back when. But Ray and some of the guys around him are trying to figure out what it means specific to consciousness. So it's one thing for the human mind in the Android mind, non-human mind, to equal one another. But at what point does that Android mind actually become a conscious entity? So that's where a lot of the different debates and discussions have been happening around consciousness. And then I'll just add one last thing. And this was something that Elon Musk was talking about last year, was that they're starting Microsoft, Google, Elon, a whole bunch of guys. They're getting together. They have an organization specific to artificial intelligence. And the idea behind the organization is to kind of create a roadmap and a processing for us to go towards the human brain and equal the human brain. Because no teams really have gotten together yet to say, hey, how are we going to teach a computer empathy? How are we going to teach a computer gentleness? All of these different elements, right, that keep us from killing one another. No one's really kind of defined that due processing, and that's what they're trying to do today, is to define that.
Yeah, I think that's, is it on? Can you hear me well? Hello? I'm here, yeah. I'm on the blind spot. So I think that there are a lot of technologies that's been released in the recent 2 to 3 years about solving a major problem, a major step toward this achievement, which is just giving a machine a common sense. I mean, if I'm going to push this cap, we're all going to figure out without learning, where it's going to fall, and we can kind of predict the trajectory it's going to fall. So there is a lot of technology like predictive learning, multitask learning, that enable kind of common sense, filling the blanks, like Jan LeCun, if you know him, director of AI in Facebook, is talking about. This is something we're currently missing, and I think it's solvable. Those technologies are yet to be fully validated. I was in NIPS conference, it's one of the biggest conferences for machine learning last year, and this was a very big topic they tried to tackle. So giving some common sense to machines, I think we're getting there. I see some progress. I think we're pretty far away from empathy and conscious. This is something I didn't see anything even near to that. But then another very interesting technology is transfer learning. Today, if I learn from model A and Sophia is having model B, there is no really a way to transfer knowledge, right? If I train a net, using your example, train a model to identify cats, she train a model to identify tigers, we can plug in our model and have like a brain, like learning from one model to another. It's called transfer learning, and another layer to kind of convey the knowledge, add some context. So we are seeing major steps to achieve this kind of reasoning and common sense for machines, but I don't think we're anywhere near empathy and consciousness, which is very important for you dealing with humans.
I work in payments, and the problem that we have is fraud detection. So we have been using machine learning for pattern recognition and anomaly detection, and we're finding that it is very powerful for specialized tasks that have a very clear reward functions. You can actually train very specialized algorithms to do that job and better than humans, right? There's no plasticity, like the difference in applying the processing power to solve a different problem. You don't have that kind of plasticity on normal machines. I think deep learning came solving that by training networks that specialize on context-dependent optimization, if you do it like that. So I'm just curious to see, for the applied enterprise, which is probably the next step that everybody is going to do adoption on speech, on automation, on interfacing. I think that's a lot of potential for that, and the recognition of humans. like whenever you were talking about pattern recognition, I remember this Israeli company who came to sell us the ability to recognize a person with 10 iterations on a neural network based on the way that they type, they move the mouse, and the way that they actually do the software intrusion detection that you were talking for securing networks for person pattern recognition. I think that's going to be the next step. And then we're going to start seeing the deterioration of privacy. I mean, and the major problem that we have now is people will create fake identities, stealing your information from Facebook. They will steal your phone number and open a second identity with a phone on your AT&T shop. And then they will take your credit card that they bought in the dark web and spend all your money. And it will take them 2 minutes, literally. So at this point, there's going to be a competition of who has the resources to actually build these automated systems. If you want an example of what's happening, just think about investment or the decision of investing in stocks has already been automated. It was the first thing that happened because people had the resources to automate it and compete with each other. So at this point, I'm just curious to see for the applied technologies before we start going into consciousness and empathy and all these very human emotions. Probably the applied automation is going to be the next step for this type of very specific cognitive optimization, right? What should be the next thing, like voice pattern recognition interfaces? What is exciting for the next 4 years?
I think that for enterprises, honestly, 95% of the problem are lucrative, can be solved with supervised learning, pretty basic. This is, I don't know if this is a well-kept secret, but this is something that like Preeti, you said at the beginning, you need to understand the business problem. This is where it starts from. And then when you ask yourself, okay, how can I solve it? Usually the current tool, pretty basic tools, of course with the right computation power and the data, now we are enabling this tool, empowering this tool, works. So this is a very important take. I sometimes see many startups, and this is a problem that I am facing, that running in the artificial intelligence technology supermarket with a credit card, just taking everything, and then, okay, why do you need all of that, right? I mean, because we have a lot of things you can apply today. I think definitely in security, we're seeing more and more need for the advanced stuff, which is deep neural network, and I haven't seen something that helped figure out the real-time identification of anomaly, like, okay, how do I respond in real time? And this is a very complicated problem for deep learning. Another thing that we see a lot of progress is reinforcement learning for robotics. This and also for security, like trial and error, brute force into places. So I say that 90% of the problem at the moment are supervised learning through these down-to-earth technologies. It's an execution problem, it's a sales problem. To sell it to organization is a conversation you need to have. And around 5% unsupervised learning, security is a big part of them, and deep learning for unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning for robotics and some innovation in security.
Sorry. My name is Ruslan Suvorov. And first of all, I wanted to say I moved over from Texas just recently, and I've been in touch with my friends over these past days. There's a lot of people that have been affected in the state, and I'm sure everybody is aware of that, but I just wanted to remind, internet has made it really, really easy for us to contribute. So anybody who hasn't yet or who wants to contribute more, please donate, please participate in it. There are a lot of people that need help over there. Thank you. And my question would be, while we're talking about the displacement of people by AI and robotics, I'm sure there are a few areas where people are happy to be displaced. For example, doing your work around the house, ironing your stuff, kitchen, right? A lot of people will be happy to be displaced. So how far are we, do you think, from a moment when we're going to see machines that are smart enough to really do that type of work? Not just vacuum the floor, but really kind of take care of everything in the house. And do you see any good initiatives right now that are kind of getting there?
So first of all, there is, I think it's a McKinsey report about automation, and chefs are one of the roles that's not going to be eliminated anytime soon. So making complicated food and creativity, talking about a renaissance, so I think chef is a very good skill set to learn their food, which is gourmet. So for this is not going anywhere. And we actually predict that we're going to see also some renaissance in gastronomy. This is, by the way, it's far from my wheelhouse, but I read it. It's going to be flourish of the gastronomy scene as well. And to do, I think it's kind of connected to the singularity question as well. I think whatever is routine, right, task, we can definitely do. If it's heating food or something which is routine and we can predict it and we have good data to learn it's possible, I don't think that there are the advanced, everything around the house can be achieved if it's something which is non-routine, right? I really looking for a robot to take out my dog sometimes, especially when it's not the best weather. I think this is achievable already. We have some, I saw this demo of that, but really far from imitating each it depends also what you define doing stuff around the house. When I'm with my kid, it's definitely non-routine. I cannot predict what my kid will do. How can I don't know, clean after him or whatever. So I think whatever is routine and can be predictable, it's going to probably be replaced by robots. Whatever is not, it's a bigger problem in my opinion.
Yeah, sorry, just one thing, but definitely mean non-routine stuff. Like imagine a house with several children in it, and so what's going on in there by the evening?
I don't see anyone can clean after my kid for the next 4 years. But I don't see any, for this kind of thing, I didn't see anything practical. Maybe some robotics and do advanced reinforcement learning, but again, they need to learn by trial and error. By design, this is reinforcement learning, so it's not pretty routine, it will be harder for them. So I'm personally not aware of those advanced everything around the house. But if you hear about something, please drop me a note.
On the other hand, you already do have robots on the commercial side in your warehouses. You know, if you have a retailer or you have an e-commerce company, they already are using robots in their warehouses to pull down the stuff, to load, unload the stuff. If there's an order that needs to be placed, they know, there are robots which go pick the stuff out, bring it to a picker. So collaborative robots, which means robots that know how to work with and around humans, are already here, but only on the commercial side, not inside residences yet.
So for the gentleman from SAP, so my company is using machine learning to do the predictive maintenance for the energy industry, and so we finally got our massive data. Now my question is, there is a lot already some asset performance management software, and we can definitely improve this. But on the other hand, we can develop our new way to just handle the technician part, which give them a very accurate prediction. So in your guys' view, should we team up with the established asset performance company to feed more intelligence to their part, or should we develop a new market to basically leverage our algorithm? Because we just have a data and algorithm. Actually, from a legal perspective, data is not belongs to us also. So, but we build a lot of profile for this big asset. That's something we want to monetize them. So I want to hear your opinion on this.
Yeah, definitely. Asset management is a big domain for machine learning, and there is a lot of industry use case where we see a lot of ROI. For example, in oil and gas, just to send someone to replace a part, a complicated part on a rig, it's very expensive. So if you can predict better when it's going to happen, or any way you can support that, and it can help them to save a lot of costs. I think it's rather than a technology problem, it's, let's say, go-to-market problem, because it's a very hard sale if you know the customer, if you have anyone from the industry, because it's a very interesting discussion to have with industry customers who are pretty, as I gave the statistic earlier, they don't have the skill set always, and they're pretty conservative. So from go-to-market perspective, it definitely makes sense to partner with a big company who has the relationship, has the customer, has the trust to offer this kind of innovation. But it's also, of course, important to know if your team can do it, if you have customer traction, maybe you can grow organically. So I would first ask if I can reach the customer myself, and of course scale. I don't know what is the level, what kind of phase you are. And yeah, from technology perspective, there are a few solutions there, but it's not asset management. I think it's still in a pretty embryonic phase. It's not like where we see a lot of innovation there. So if you have a nice product, we can touch base, and I would be happy to follow up on that.
Run? Okay. My question is about text-to-speech technology. When is it going to be completely identical to human voice intonation? The reason I'm asking is because I love listening to Audible. I can go through much more content, and so when I do research online, I tend to want to listen to articles so I can multitask or, again, go through a lot of content quicker. And so I figured out there is a way for the Mac to read it to you. So I use that, but the voice is very robotic. I looked at APIs out there, but I couldn't find anything that as close as possible to human voice that is comfortable listening to. So a question to you, what is your opinion about text-to-speech? What is the closest API out there that is, if you know, that is close to human voice? And if you think there is still a place for innovation there. Thank you.
I have the perfect API for you. I have a perfect API for you. I'm going to tell you, though, in private because it's a competitive advantage.
I think there are many skills for Alexa. I use some of them. Alexa, AWS, has a very flourished ecosystem that creates skills. Skill is like unique capability that enable you to plug Alexa, who has a very nice voice and pretty good speech recognition and capability. So there are a few, if you're going to do text-to-speech, and I don't know if you have a special data source that you are using, but there are pretty sure there are many solutions there in the Alexa skills website. There are thousands of capabilities there that can enable this kind of thing. So this is Alexa voice. I download like 5 of them. One of them is just dog sounds because I like how Alexa talks in million sounds of dogs, and my dog will get all crazy. But the quality of voice there, imitation, is very high. So yeah, Alexa webpage with skills. I just did a service for Amazon, so I hope
I would actually not to.
Go ahead.
I would actually recommend Google Voice versus Alexa Voice. Yes, so Alexa's wonderful. They actually open sourced Alexa. I don't know if everyone's aware of this, but Amazon just open sourced Alexa because they realize they can't do every single vertical known to man. So it's better to have folks develop off of them. And then Google's like, oh, well, we're going to open source Google Voice. And so they're open sourcing. The differentiation is that with Google Voice, you have DeepMind powering kind of underneath. And then that's really wonderful as far as text, voice-to-text translation. But then what you're talking about, there's nuances. You get into accents. You get into voice inflections. You get into different regions of the country say things differently. And there's a university that's been working on that problem for 40 years, of which I'll tell you about afterwards.
Hello? Okay, just checking. Thanks again for sharing your experiences. This question is mostly around deep learning and healthcare diagnostics. So what is your opinion on that space of advances in healthcare diagnostic space with deep learning? And what advice would you give in terms of, to young entrepreneurs trying to tackle that space? What do you look for with respect to these kind of fields? In terms of.
So healthcare in general is very hot sector right now in ML AI. And diagnostic in particular is also, I mean, there are quite a few companies which have raised nice, big, solid rounds in that space. In terms of what would investors look for in a space like that? First and foremost, because it's healthcare, is are there any compliance regulation because it's healthcare? So just making sure that those hurdles have already been crossed or those hurdles won't really be a part of the solution is something that investors do, at least early stage. I'm an early stage investor. So that's first and foremost. Second really is the efficacy of the solution compared to what is available in the market right now. It's not just about reducing human labor. That is an important aspect, but does your solution provide better throughput or better performance, or are there fewer errors? What is it that's a value add? That's something else to think about. And one final thing really is, what is the ROI for the customer? And what I mean by that is, this is not a healthcare example, but this is an example of an actual company in robotics, and it's very similar, so I think it would be helpful. Right now, manufacturing companies in China hire labor at about $6,000 a year. And most of the robots that would be required to replace them, the companies that are selling those robots are charging around $40,000 per robot. So if you think about it, for any company, it would take more than 6 years to get the ROI on replacing one human. And that's, if you just think about an average factory worker, it's just not a thing that would work for them. So something else to think about really is, the technology may be awesome, but if it is replacing, for example, radiologists, you may have heard of a company called Analytic, right? If you're replacing a radiologist, how much does a radiologist cost right now, and how much would this technology cost? That's something else to think about.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think just to build up on that, I think the data is very important there. I'm not sure what exactly the solution, but high quality data in healthcare is a big differentiator. Actually, IBM acquired Intrusion for the X-ray imagery, over $2 billion. Just like they acquired weather.com for another data, because this is what fits there. So if you have high quality data, it's very important there, I think, to come up with the right solution. Other than this, there are many tough problems to solve there, like personalized medicine, and I'm not sure what exactly is the solution, or X-ray scanning. This is where we meant a lot of humans, because you help to scan the X-ray more efficiently, more accuracy. It's definitely a good example of human augmentation. So the company who has some partnership with hospitals who get unique data have some competitive advantages there. But on the whole, yeah, I mean, we can talk offline more on the solution, but it's a very huge gamut of options and many hard problems, and where we see deep learning being applied as well. It's one of the topics which are very advanced.
Good evening. Good information. But I got a question about the overall machine learning, AI. Who's going to it faster? Is it doing in the United States, or China, or India, Brazil, Russia? And then what's that going to mean in overall to the United States? But then again, looking around here, what's that going to mean to the individuals in this room who are obviously interested in it? And then what about my next door neighbor who can barely tie his sneakers in the morning? Will there be a place for him?
Lots.
It's a very good question.
Lots of different subparts to it. But right now, United States is leading the innovation in ML in a big way. China is second close though, and they are working really hard on it as well. But so far, even in China, if you look at the community that is working on ML AI, it's still people from US who are working on it. It does not mean you can undermine the country. China is putting in a lot of efforts to make sure they are up to date on MLAI as well. In terms of, I guess you are talking about how does it affect different sectors, I mean, the people in different sections of the society, so to speak. I actually think it's a very exciting time right now to be in ML and AI, because unlike previous day where, for example, if you were in a specific vertical, you were stuck in that vertical all your life, because ML AI is applicable across different industries, you get bored with what you're doing right now. As long as you have the ML AI skills, they are actually transferable to different verticals. So it is very exciting from that perspective. You know? So that's one thing to think about, because this is just phenomenal, which was something not previously possible at all. But now it's this skill set that is just applicable across different industries. Second is, I really think this is the time as a country we really need to think about making sure that digital technologies and computer courses are made compulsory right from school, because that is something that is coming. You know, it's a genie that's been let out of the bottle. People are trying in all kinds of ways to make sure, hey, as a society, we are protected in every possible way, and efforts are in place for all of those. At the same time, we can see automation coming in certain areas, and the best thing to do is to be prepared for it, which means the generation that is coming out of school needs to not just be computer literate in terms of, hey, I can check email and I can do my texts and all of that, but have digital courses under belt, which will help them get jobs in the new tech world that's coming up. Any additional?
Yeah, I'm like you said, Preeti. So USA is leading, but it's not by a landslide. I'm putting my money on China because of, we just gave example for healthcare. So you need data, and data in the United States healthcare, you have one X-ray machine which is from this type of brand and another one. It's not the same. In China, all hospitals have the same machine. You know how easy it is to learn. All the data is the same. It's like easier for the machine to learn. I talked to a guy from Baidu, and they have billions of selfies, images a day, billions, and I cannot give, I don't know regarding data privacy, if they use data more than the States, but they are pretty more liberal regarding using data and learning more. And I know the government has really put it as strategic priorities. I mean, I go to machine learning conferences. Last year I saw the new Beijing Institute for Machine Learning. So there is a government behind this, and when China push something in this kind of strategic level, it's usually very successful. Huge amount of data to learn from Didi. Didi is the equivalent for Uber. In an average day, Didi in Beijing, in China, is doing more rides than Uber in 1 or 2 weeks. This is a statistic by order of magnitude. A lot of data, which is the oil to fuel today the learning. So I'm definitely think we're going to see. We see investment there as well. And they're going to close the gap. And this is something which I think it's not just it's something I think great, because a lot of innovation come from there. And yeah, and just the last point regarding what you said, I'm a great believer in empathy. It was a very, very tough question from Ethic Institute, forgot the name, but if we have a robotic nurse that can provide better treatment, and you offer this to a person instead of a human nurse with all the empathy, right? So what is better from this person? So it's not only technology, we definitely need a society. And I know there is a lot of things that you kind of try to define the boundaries of empathy and how we're going to continue to evolve as a society. And this book is still being written, so it's a very hot topic. I think it's a very good question, and I say I'm optimistic. I believe in the humankind. So.
And I agree about China being right on the heels of the United States. There's an interesting thing that's happening, and I'm like contributing as an intellectual property attorney. The Chinese have been, over the past several years, have been extremely interested in protecting intellectual property in China. And I think a lot of people still don't realize that China is one of the best markets in the world to protect your IP. Machine learning, AI, it's all about IP. And the United States has increasingly over the last few years been worse and worse about protecting intellectual property. In fact, it's seen as, you talk about patent trolls and everything over here. China just went from one of the easiest, most efficient place in the world to get an injunction, which means to stop your competitors from doing what they do, to one where they're now revamping their system, so they're also going to offer exceptional damages for patent infringement, which is coming out soon. That used to be what the US did. We were all about damages and didn't do much on injunctions. But I think China, because this field is so, IP is so important, China is going to have an additional advantage in capturing the market.
We have time for one last quick question and maybe some quick answers.
So you mentioned about how the big five basically have all of the data. I don't think consumers particularly enjoy that. Definitely entrepreneurs find that very challenging. I was wondering if you've heard anything of a movement towards a unified account system, something where basically users would have control over who sees their data, and entrepreneurs, like if they presented something that aligned with people's purposes, they'd have, you know, like more data than Google, Facebook have today. Yeah, I'm just curious, like, because user accounts seems to be very central to a lot of these issues surrounding AI.
I can answer that. So if you are using a free product, say, for example, at Google, you use Gmail, right? And all of your email is in Gmail, like I use Google a lot, also for my enterprise accounts. So if you don't pay, you are the product. So, and if you do, then a company that is acquiring your data has to have guidelines in place to protect your information in a reliable way. And also, it's up to the governments, because in certain countries, you know, for example, Russia just prohibited virtual VPNs. Now it's basically a crime to use one. I know in China it's been prohibited for a long time, so they're trying to, you know, monitor usage of the data. So again, that is something that not up to companies, but up to governments in some countries.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's give it up for our panel. Let's hear it for Bill Ahman, our great moderator. Let's hear it for Detati Digital Marketing, our host, our partners, our video team, and our event team. And let's hear it for our audience for sticking around. Let's hear it for me. Yay. So the video will be available in a few weeks on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ideaIPO. Our panel is going to stick around. I'll talk to them one-on-one for a few minutes. As a courtesy to our hosts, we like to leave by 9:15. If you want to meet me at Denny's or Rosewood, come talk to me. Thanks for coming.